I am so excited that you're here because the topic that we're going to be discussing today is something that I have, sorry, I'm battling allergies, something that I've struggled with all my life. And I didn't even realize that this was the issue. I was someone who identified as myself with being highly sensitive. I avoided conflict. I was the overfunctioning one. I was hyper-receptive. On numerous occasions, I identified with being a people pleaser. So my focus was on others being happy to the point where I then had forgotten what I wanted and what I liked because I was trying to cater to everybody else. I also found that I felt responsible for how people felt. So if I was with someone and they were upset or they were hurt, it became my focus to change their mood. Like, it was bananas. Anyhow, also conversations. Oh my God, I always felt like I had to carry the conversation. So if there was a pause or a lull, a silence, I felt I had to fill it so that the other person wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I don't know why I felt that it was my responsibility to entertain them, but it is what it is. And as a result, oftentimes I'd find myself feeling sad, angry, or resentful that people didn't intuit or respect my boundaries. And, you go through a process of constantly ignoring your needs, not stating your preferences, stifling your desires, and the frustration begins to mount, and that frustration eventually is going to come out in some way. Another thing I was doing was avoiding or feeling uncomfortable bringing up my boundaries, the few that I had. And as a result, I would then make excuses for other people's bad behavior so that I could avoid the discomfort of stating that what they did wasn't cool or whatever. I essentially was creating problematic relationships because I wasn't able to speak authentically. I wasn't able to share my preferences. I wasn't able to say no. And when I say I wasn't able to, I mean this is completely, the onus was on me. I was also taking on other people's problems and their emotions as my own and trying to fix everything. And as a result, I was attracting these boundary bullies, people who were constantly showing up in my life where it was very one-sided. They were taking, and of course I was giving. And when I started to feel drained or remove myself, they would say things and do things to make me feel guilty. Guilt was the feeling that would come up. And so, that was, again, I had no idea it was because of boundaries. I just thought I was attracting these people and had no idea why and the what and whatever. I just thought I was weak. I was also an exhausted perfectionist, thinking that if I just worked harder, then people would value me, that if I just gave more, my clients would be happy. Not realizing that my clients were happy, that I was the one who was burning myself out because of these preconceived ideas of my value and my worth. Oftentimes, all the times, I would make plans and cancel the last minute. And of course, that starts wearing down friendships and relationships. So not good all around. I was also the person who would do everything, anything and everything, and usually without asking for or accepting help when it was offered. Oftentimes I would feel that I was being taken for granted, and at times I even felt invisible. Another thing I was doing was I found myself constantly thinking about past conversations and thinking about what I should or shouldn't have said. And when I had spoken up, there was that moment of fear or regret that I had done so. A lot of times I would avoid speaking up and then justify why I didn't speak up. Another way that boundaries or lack of them showed up was when I was paying for a service and I was unsatisfied with the service that had been provided, but I avoided saying so to the person. And I would even tip them still. And again, make excuses for why I should still provide a tip and why I shouldn't say anything. When friends or family had an issue, I would feel compelled to make suggestions or to try to find solutions for them, even when they didn't ask for my help. And this drove my sister batty because she just wanted an ear and I went right into action mode. And I think for myself, I found that I was saying yes when I would much have rather said no. And if I wasn't saying yes, then I was making up excuses or I was lying to avoid saying no directly. I'm still working on this whole boundaries thing, but what I can say is I have gotten really, really good in 2 areas in particular. Number 1, when there is a pause in a conversation, there's some silence, there's a lull, I just keep my big yapper shut, because it is during those times that I have found myself volunteering for things I wouldn't have otherwise volunteered myself for, doing things, agreeing to things, all the things that aren't good for me. So now I just keep my mouth shut, and I'm not going to lie, sometimes it is uncomfortable, but I persevere. I realize that I'm not 100% responsible for what happens in any conversation. Conversing is a 2-person activity, with each party being 50% responsible for how it transpires. So yeah, I just keep my yapper shut. Another little side note that I've discovered is feeling overly responsible for conversation is very similar to feeling overly responsible in relationships. And that is something I'm still working on. But as I said, I'm a work in progress and I'm okay with it. I do recognize it, and I'm actively making changes to put boundaries in place with that as well. The other area that I've become really, really good at is saying no. No is my new favorite word. I say no to people all the time. And I'm going to tell you that when you say no to people, watch how doors open for you. Things will be magically given to you. People will come to you and do what you want them to do. Unless, of course, you actually want to say yes to them, then by all means, hell yes, your pretty little face off. But here's the reality. Most humans don't understand the value of time, so they're not going to value yours. They don't value their own. And I have discovered that in 99% of cases, when somebody tells you that they need something or that something is required of you, whatever it happens to be, it's not accurate. So whether it is in a personal setting or a professional setting, like let's say somebody says that you are needed in person or you have to jump on the phone or this is just how we do it, not true. So my suggestion to you is to say no, be polite, be calm, but do with certainty. And when people feel that you are unshakable, they won't even try. Remember, anyone telling you that they need you has their own agenda. So if you're unavailable to meet their agenda and yet they still desire to have theirs fulfilled, trust me when I tell you they will find a way. The key is to be unattached to all the outcomes and all the things. And if you can do that, you have automatically won everything in life. So from a personal perspective, I had a friend of mine who wanted me to take a look at something she had written, and she had stated that she's going to email it to me and she wanted to have it out that night. Now that was her agenda. So she had essentially told me, you need to look at this before this evening when I want to post it. I already had things I wanted to do. I didn't want to look at this. And so I carried on with what I was doing. And trust me, it took everything in me to not just say, okay, I'm going to quickly look at her things and then get back to mine, because the guilt kicked in. I was thinking, oh, what kind of a friend am I if I'm not doing this right now? She's going to think I'm a bitch, that I don't care, that I'm not there for her. All these stories were rolling around in my head, and then I quickly shut it down. And truth be told, I could have looked at that post in the time that I was wasting in the energy of it, but I'm purposely trying to train myself, not trying, but I'm purposely training myself to not be on other people's agendas and not be reactive, to be responsive. And so I had already committed to myself that I was going to do what I was working on. And that was my priority, period, the end, full stop. And the better I become at focusing on staying in my lane and doing my thing, and then once that is done, moving on to other people's, then I won't have that disruption, that time where I'm thinking and worrying and whatever isn't going to be wasted. Side note also, I now turn off all notifications when I'm doing the work that I want to, when I want to get into my zone. All notifications are off on my phone. But in case something comes up where I see something, a message or an email of somebody requesting something of me, I'm building that muscle to say no and to still stay focused, or not to even respond. to just focus on what I'm doing. And if I have time, then I will. So anyway, going back to my story, I finished what I was working on and I sent her a note and I asked her if she still wanted me to take a look at it. And it was closer to the evening by this point. And she just responded with, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Whenever you have time, I've actually changed my mind. I decide to post in a couple of days. And so it just goes to show, if I had sidetracked my work in order to focus on her work, and then, she decided to put it off, then I would have been resentful with myself and with her. So it avoids everything. I honored my time and my commitment to myself, and it was a win-win all around. And even if she had said, no, I had to find somebody else, or whatever the case was, I would have been okay with it. I would have felt good that I had honored putting myself first, as opposed to regretting and resenting the fact that I had once again caved in and put somebody else's needs ahead of my own. You always, always, always get to have what you want from alignment. So know your boundaries, know your requirements, know what you're available for and what you're not available for. Don't settle, sacrifice, or compromise. Don't say yes to shit that doesn't, down to your core, suit you. And of course, all of this can be from a place of integrity, from compassion, from respect. It's just about seeing the difference between somebody saying something is needed, because half the time they're in reactive mode themselves. They're, in the case of my friend, she got this idea. She was super excited. She jumped on it without really thinking it through and thinking that another set of eyes needed to be on it, or that it was just my eyes that needed to be on it. So she's in reactive mode, and I'm choosing not to get pulled into that. So the softer approach that you can take, which I don't recommend only because when you do take this softer approach, it sucks so much energy out of you. But I do appreciate the fact that there are some people who really have an issue with saying no, who have a lot of guilt and fear and whatever around that. So this would be for you if this is you. And then I want you to work to saying no flat out right. So the softer approach would be to say something like, I need some time to think about it. Or, I'm going to give you a maybe for now because I need to look at my calendar, or I need to check, X. Let me get back to you on that. I actually need some time to think about it, if I can make it happen or not. So those are all a bit of a softer approach. And again, what happens is, although you've given yourself some time to get out of the immediate response of saying, yes, you'll do it. So it is training your muscle. Just remember that it takes energy, because now you're going to be in your head thinking about how you can say no. And then the stories can come up of why you should say yes and why it'd be easier just to say yes now, when of course easier doesn't necessarily mean better. Some ways you can say no is by saying, no thanks, I'll pass. Or none for me, thanks. Or maybe I'm afraid I can't. Or let's say they invited you somewhere you don't want to go. I'm not really into that type of, music, that food, event, whatever it happens to be, but I hope you have a wonderful time. Or you can just simply say, I'd rather not. Or thank you for thinking of me, but I'm already committed on that date. Or I don't have the bandwidth for that, or whatever it happens to be. The quicker you can say no, obviously the better it is for you, because then you can just kind of close those doors and move on to what you were doing without being in the gray zone of now having to get back to them and say no. But again, go with what works for you. If you need to build that muscle, then do the softer approach. So I hope that has helped. I would love to hear your feedback. If you feel that boundaries has been your sticky point too, I'd love to know if you have tried something that you think would help other people. I'd love to hear that too, and I'd be happy to implement something new and let you know how it worked for me. And that's it. I hope you have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you on the flip side. Take care.